Hey folks, and welcome back once again to Home Build Happiness. My name is Ron, and today we're going to tackle a Ford TFI ignition system. I'll tell you where we were at and what I've done to get to this point where I'm at, and then we're going to talk disassembly of the distributor to get to the PIP sensor. So if you do follow this channel, you know that my wife and I, we live out in New Mexico in the high desert. We live on an off-grid homestead. On our way out here, from the other side of the country, this van died and went into a no-start, crank no-start condition, and we had to get towed in. I did some of the basic things you would think of on the side of the road. I've actually got a box of goodies that over the years, as I've changed things out, I like to save stuff that I know for a fact works. It really helps out for diagnostics on the side of the road. So I had a known working ignition coil, I had a TFI module, and things like that. So I went ahead and tried all of them. Nothing worked. So we got towed out here. So I already knew I had fuel. Fueling was not an issue here. If you are on the side of the road and you want to know if you have an ignition or a fuel related issue, just carry a can of starting fluid with you. Give it a couple hits, try to crank it. If you get nothing, you'll know pretty quickly whether or not you have a fuel or ignition problem. There's a lot of ways online that you can diagnose a PIP sensor. A lot of it has to do with using a DVM. You're checking for resistance along the wiring harness. You're looking at pins on the ECM. We didn't do any of that. So I actually had a TFI connector. This right here is the connector that plugs into your distributor mounted TFI. So on it, you're going to have 6 wires. I'm going to take you through what each one of these do. I'm also going to throw an image up on the screen here. As you'll see, these top 2 wires are going to go to pins on your ECM. For what I'm doing, they're basically useless. Those middle 2 wires, essentially both have 12 volt positive going to them. For what I'm doing, I can tie those 2 together with 12 volt directly from the battery. That 5th wire from the top, that's going to be your coil signal. So this is going to be the line that goes directly to your coil ground side, and this is what gives the pulse to the coil. And then this last one is just ground, and we can just take that directly to the battery. As you can see, I've already got this connector kind of pigtailed up here. The reason that I did that, what I needed to know is if that distributor was functioning properly. And what we're looking for with the distributor is basically it needs to get 12 volt positive, it needs to get ground, it needs to send a pulse to the coil. We need to verify that is working. This would be a way for us to do that. And I did use a spark tester at various areas in the ignition system between the coil and the plugs, and we did have some signal, but it was very, very intermittent. So this is a way, once I hooked this up, that I knew for a fact we weren't going to get the injectors firing and we were not going to get timing advance. But with this hooked up the way that I had it, I knew for a fact if I hit it with starting fluid and we had a good distributor, we were going to get fire. So I tested that, we got no dice. So I did what most of you are probably thinking about doing. I actually went and bought another one of these. And guess what? It fixed it in about 5 minutes. But like with everything else, I like to have a backup, because this is the one thing I did not have a backup of, and it cost us having to be towed 210 miles. So I don't really want to be caught up like that again. So when I bought that new distributor, I also bought a pickup. We're actually going to have to use this press again to disassemble this guy. And if you have a shop press at the house, these sensors aren't very expensive, and these OE distributors are very, very good. So we're going to rebuild this guy. I'm going to take you through the steps. Take this TFI module off. We're going to take it out. You'll generally need some more thermal paste to put that back on. So at this point, I'm assuming that you've already gotten your distributor out and you've marked timing on your vehicle. Now what I do not necessarily take the vehicle to top dead center to do that. What I've done in the past, I really just make sure I'm lined up right here on this nut. And if I can turn that engine to where I'm lined up right there, it just makes it easier, because if you are going to go with a new distributor, let's say you mess something up here and you've got to resort to that, you're not going to have markings on that new distributor. That's a 15/16 socket on the crank bolt. So we're going to go ahead and start by taking this off. It's just 2 screws here. It's a 7mm socket to do that. I'm going to go ahead and use a punch and a small hammer to get these roll pins out. And since we were just talking about distributor replacement completely as an assembly, if you do decide to go that route, just keep in mind that this gear does matter depending on what type of engine you have. If you're working with a flat tappet cam, you're going to want a cast iron gear. If you have a roller assembly, then you're going to want to go with the steel gear. If you mix and match them, one's going to grind the other one up, so it's important that you get the right one. If you don't know or need to know, I know you can take the push rods out. You can measure those. And these vans, getting that valve cover off really isn't an easy thing. So and also, these holes right here are not drilled completely on center, so it's important that the way you bring this gear off is the way you put it back on. You don't want to be in a position where you're 180 out, or you're just going to have to pull that back off. So what I'm basically doing on this gear, I've noticed that there's 2 indentions right here. There's 2 markings on the gear. And when I look up here, those are almost in line with this notch right up here. I'm just going to basically use that as kind of a mental note so I know which direction to put it back on. And folks, if you're having a hard time getting that last bit of roll pin out, just get you something small, stick in here like an Allen key, punch it the rest of the way through. That's one thing about living out here where we live at. You don't really get the luxury of having a hardware store right down the street, so use what you got. Now we're just going to take and lock that gear in there. You know, we do not want to harm this thing, so we're just going to lock it up like that. All right, so we got everything out, and look, I think we found our problem. See that right there, folks? Looks like we're missing our magnet. And that would explain the intermittency right there. All right, so before we clean this particular piece, we're going to pull this PIP sensor off. The size of these fasteners on it, they're all going to be 7/32. As you can see by my socket here, it is the same size that you need to actually get the TFI module off of the distributor. So, and if you have had trouble with sockets in the past, a grinder will get that thing ground down just good enough to sneak in there and get those out. This is a great time to use a parts washer if you got one, but we're just going to use a bristle brush. We'll get it all cleaned up. All right, check back in a minute. All right, folks, just want you to know that everything that you've seen in today's video and in previous videos is only for educational and informational purposes only. But by some chance you decide to engage in these activities, it's very important that you wear the proper PPE. And that's personal protective equipment. That means that before your hands get dirty, greasy, with any kind of solvent or petroleum product, you put on gloves. And if you're going to be grinding, using high pressure air, blowing those solvents into the air, you don't want to get infected by particles. So you wear a proper approved N95 grade mask, and you want to keep your peepers in good condition, so you should wear shatterproof safety goggles. Folks, it's the right thing to do. Do not engage in activities not approved by your local HOA, EPA, FDA, USDA, and for God's sakes, subscribe to Home Built Happiness. It's the right thing to do, guys. We got a lot of this cool stuff coming out. You'll get a chance to be informed when we drop those videos. All right, let's get back to business. All right, so we've got everything cleaned up. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for government work. So we got that. I actually had to press this off. You shouldn't have to do that. Now I believe these swirls right here, that's actually an oil groove that's been cut in. So while you're cleaning this, get you a brush, get down in there, make sure that you clean that out, because ours was pretty buggered up. Now, we know this part of our pickup is going to go right here. So we're going to start right there with that guy. If you choose to do like me and use an impact, do not impact it down. Just use that thing as a screwdriver only. Make sure you don't cross thread or strip anything out. Just like that. And like I said, we'll get in there and just give these a little boom. I'm sure that there is a torque spec. I do not know what that is. I'm just using a little bit of common sense, not going down too tight on them. Okay, I'm gonna grab our distributor shaft. Put this back on. Okay. Don't know if we're supposed to coat this in oil, but since I do see oil grooves on it, I've just got some synthetic motorcycle oil here. I'm literally just going to get the bottle like this, dunk this guy in, move it around. As you can see, we got some good oil on it. Nice smooth rotation, which is what you're looking for. I'm going to just wipe off the bottom of this shaft right here. And folks, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but putting this on, it is absolutely imperative that everything's lined up correctly, especially on the gear side of things. A lot of people seem to want to shy away from doing this, and it's really not that bad, guys. We always want to check, make sure we got good tolerance, make sure we got play on here, nothing's making contact. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and set our gear on. Now listen, this, like, I can't stress enough how many people don't want to do this. They think it's too difficult. Like, it's really easy process. We're just eyeing this up. You know, we're not here trying to be scientists or anything. We're just eyeing this up. The only thing that I would say, like with bearings and most things, when it comes to them seating, like you'll see I've got it kind of evened up, so you can see kind of a even gap around that shaft and the gear. Just like setting bearings and things, they want to take the path of least resistance and they'll kind of try to fall one way or the other. Just make sure you help it out by seating it up. This should go on without a whole lot of help, but if you need it to spray anything on it, I wouldn't use anything thick like a motor oil. This is what I've got on standby. It's by Cano Labs. It's called Aerocroil. It's a penetrating lubricant, but I will say this is probably one of the best on the market that I've ever used. About 6 years ago, I bought those cans at a Fastenal. I'll put a link in the description to Amazon. You can buy yourself a can there. It is not cheap, folks, but I promise you it's one of the best. but we're gonna try to get away with not using anything. We're just gonna roll it, make sure nothing's binding. Then we're just gonna take and press that roll pin back into this guy. That TFI plate is actually a great way to level this while you do this. Grab our punch. It looks like it's good, but we'll give it one more. Once again, give it a spin. Make sure nothing's rubbing, everything feels right. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put this lid back on. Now, if you don't have any markings like myself here, just know that this little notch right here is gonna face towards the front of the engine, that little notch for the distributor cap. So your TFI module will be to the left, Motorcraft and the part number will be pointing forward, and so will that notch right there on the bowl. So that's also something to know. Alright folks, so there you go. Put your cap, rotor, and TFI module back on, and you're off to the races. Now we're doing this on a 1990 Econoline club wagon, but this works on Mustangs, F-150s, Grand Marquis, T-Birds. There's a whole range of vehicles that use this style ignition system. Folks, a lot of people are scared to dive into this. You just saw me do it in the back of a van, and we live in the middle of the desert. Folks don't even have water out here. I was able to get this done in about 30 minutes, and that includes cleaning everything. So listen folks, if you've gotten information, education, even some inspiration to be able to do this yourself, or if I saved you some money, go ahead and help Home Built Happiness make some money by clicking that subscribe. We got a lot of stuff that we do in regards to this vehicle. We got a differential swap. I'll go ahead and link that for the gear swap. We've done this. We've done a bunch of different work, and we're embarking on the homestead here as well. And if you want to stay up on everything that's coming from this point on, just ring that bell, all right? We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks a lot for checking this out. See you in the next video. Bye.